2019, No Domine, was a very big year for movies. We had Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Marriage Story, Endgame, Knives Out, Toy Story 4, John Wick 3, Joker, The Lighthouse, Ford vs. Ferrari, A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, Frozen 2, Spider-Man Far From Home, Honey Boy, It Chapter 2, Us, Godzilla, King of the Monsters, Jumanji: The Next Level, Zombieland 2, and many more. From blockbusters, big studios, to smaller indie gems, there have been a lot of films. Some I didn't list, and many I still haven't seen. And I know a lot of people just loved Parasite. To be fair, Parasite is good, but it was not my personal favorite or, in my top 5 of last year. And no, I am not going to do a video on Parasite because there's a million of them on YouTube. Everyone has a video on how Parasite is brilliant, so that scene is just a little too crowded for me. I'm going to break down a few films that did come out last year, willing that I have the time and energy to put these videos together, but I'm starting off with a bang. Jojo Rabbit. It was my hands-down absolute favorite of last year. It made me laugh harder than anything, and it made me cry ugly tears in the theater. When I first saw the trailer for this film, it became my most anticipated film. I had to see it. And so I took my brother and we saw it, and I was blown away. I loved a lot of other films. A second favorite for me last year would probably be Knives Out. But I don't want this video to be me here gushing about Jojo Rabbit for no reason. I want to talk about the main criticisms against Jojo Rabbit and illustrate how Taika Waititi, the director of the film, used comedy to tell his heartwarming story with a moving message. And please, let's not forget, art is subjective, these are my own opinions, and whatever, you liked Parasite and think I'm a moron for saying otherwise, but please, let's just agree to disagree.
Dinner is neutral ground. This table is Switzerland. Here's Marshal Jojo. You're our top man. Prepare to leave the house.
Today, you boys will be involved in such activities as war games, ambush techniques, and blowing stuff up.
I don't think I can do this.
Was? Of course you can.
I imagine that when sane, normal people saw the trailer for Jojo Rabbit, they probably thought, this is horrible! A 10-year-old boy's imaginary friend is Hitler? What is this world coming to? We're not taking World War II's atrocities seriously. And then, there's me, who loved Taika Waititi and is kind of insane, and I saw the trailer and went, oh my gosh, that looks so awesome, I can't wait. So a big criticism I hear over the movie, why people seem to dislike it, is exactly because of that. The apparent comedic nature of the film, the goofiness, and, the fact that Hitler is this imaginary friend. So let's address the tone, why it's a comedy, and why this works. What is tone? Quote, the first few moments of a scene are some of the most crucial. Not only do you have to establish time and space so your audience can be well-oriented and informed, but you also have to set the tone, which will essentially tell your audience how to feel about the events that are about to unfold on screen. In my words, tone is a tool for communicating story through various elements at a director's arsenal, such as cinematography, lighting, dialogue, pacing, and editing. The first opening minutes of the film perfectly articulate to the audience exactly what kind of film this is. It sets up Jojo's character, who he is, and this perfectly establishes to us the foundation before we begin the journey and watch his character change. It also highlights the strength and power that Hitler actually had over the nation because it caused little boys to idolize him. This thought is terrifying, but it is through the tone that we're able to laugh at it, though it still resonates, and it takes away some of that power.
Adolf Hitler. I am willing and ready to give up my life for him. So help me God.
Yes, that's right. Now, Jojo Betzler, what is your mind?
Snake mind.
And Jojo Betzler, what is your body?
Wolf body.
Jojo Betzler, what is your courage?
Panther courage.
And Jojo Betzler, what is your soul?
A German soul.
Yeah, man, you're ready.
To everyone who saw the Jojo trailer and said, making fun of Nazis, that's horrible, let me introduce you to...
Schuten. Das Schuten. Das trifft das Sauerkraut mit der Schuten. Der Brust mit der Schuten. Der Blitzensack weiter mit der Schuten. Der Blütensack Pferden. Das Strängelchen mit der Blütensack Pferden. Und der Blitzensack Helden. Besieg! Besieg! Das Schuten. Das Schuten.
A big part in understanding how the tone of Jojo Rabbit works, I think, is by examining similar examples in history where culture has had big laughs making fun of one of the world's worst humans. Charlie Chaplin starred as Adenoid Hynkel in the 1940s classic The Great Dictator, where Charlie played both the Hitler knockoff and a poor Jewish barber to contrast the Great Dictator. I have not seen this movie, but I have seen a few clips and did some research on it for this little video I'm making. While looking back on these clips, we can all admit that they're very humorous, and it's also important to know the context in which this film was made and released. The Great Dictator began filming in 1939 at the start of the World War. Just a few years prior, in 1935, a little picture called Triumph of the Will was made. Triumph of the Will is considered to be a propaganda masterpiece. While it is morally horrible in that respect, it is, encouraging people to join Hitler, it is hard to deny the craftsmanship in which it was created and designed to be so alluring. The cinematography and sound design were all focused on making Hitler look powerful, look like a hero of a nation, a conqueror of the world. How could you defeat someone like that? Believe it or not, it was a bit of a risky move to put the Great Dictator in the United States because the country had not yet become enemies against Germany. Chaplin had already been on the Nazis' radar, and he was referred to as a disgusting Jewish acrobat. Despite him not being Jewish, and even though the film would ruffle some feathers, he was determined to do it. The film actually premiered in London during air raids. It makes you really think, how could people laugh at, this fake, pretend mockery of Hitler when they were literally being bombed by the real person? It's a bit crazy. Plenty of cartoons also during World War II took shots at Hitler, making him look as stupid as possible, because who would want to follow an idiot? After the war, how were people going to deal with the trauma of so many lives lost? The countless soldiers across the world who gave their lives to defeat such evil, and all the evil crimes committed against anyone who was an Aryan. How could people heal from such trauma? From 1965 to 1971, there was a great American classic TV show called Hogan's Heroes. And all it did was make fun of Nazis in every possible way. It showed POW life as being pretty fun, with hijinks and clever schemes to foil the stupid Nazis and get away with pretty much everything. When the show started airing, most of the men and women who served during the war would have been in their 40s and 50s, and they were obviously aware of the horrors of that war. But Hogan's Heroes managed to come at the right place and right time for an audience to laugh at Hitler and at the Nazis, who were once the most feared people in the world, now turned into bumbling idiots. There is something strangely cathartic about watching Hogan's Heroes and watching them win every single episode.
For the first time since I've taken command here, I want to know nothing.
And if you thought Hogan's Heroes was the last thing to make fun of Hitler, you'd be dead wrong.
Springtime for Hitler and Germany. Deutschland is happy and gay. We're marching to a faster pace. Look out, here comes the master race.
Mel Brooks has said that the song Springtime for Hitler got him 1,100 letters, quote, from every rabbi that ever saw it, end quote. Mel Brooks also said, quote, I didn't think I was sinful in any way. I thought I was making a point. You get up on a soapbox and you argue with a Nazi, you're gonna lose. But if you ridicule him and make people laugh, then you win. It's as simple as that." End quote. The Producers was Mel Brooks' film-making debut in 1968. Without that success, there may have never been Blazing Saddles, Spaceballs, or my personal favorite, Robin Hood's Men in Tights. This film debut actually earned Brooks an Oscar for Best Original Screenplay. The movie, which then became a play, and then again a film adaptation, is about a couple of young producers trying to make some money by making the worst musical ever, one about Hitler. While I haven't seen this movie yet, I've heard a lot about it, and it obviously made a big significance not only in Mel Brooks' career, but helped further shape the image of Hitler in pop culture away from a powerful, terrifying maniac to a simply ridiculous and stupid maniac. Like Mel Brooks said, that's what he wanted to do, take away the power of Hitler. But why did director Taika Waititi decide to make Jojo Rabbit a comedy?
I couldn't, again, knowing myself and knowing what the stories I tell, I decided that I had to put more of that stuff in, more of that humor, the imaginary Hitler and all that stuff, because otherwise I just wouldn't have felt comfortable doing a drama.
Taika knew what kind of filmmaker he was, and he knew the story he wanted to tell. The comedy and tone of Jojo Rabbit is what makes the story unique, alive, and profound in its message. A typical World War II sad drama wouldn't have necessarily had the same effect that this movie had, and that's because we've all seen a lot of World War II sad dramatic movies.
I think when you when you look at a lot of World War II films, a lot of the palette is often it's like very dulled down, and they mute the colours in the films and desaturate things because we have to make it seem more depressing. In reality, towards the end of the war in Germany, especially because they knew it was over and they knew the dream was over and they knew that they were probably going to die, most of the people would put on their best clothes, their brightest colours, put on their very best makeup, and party, and the whole of Germany was like very bright and vibrant and colourful. So every time you see these films where it's like, oh, everyone's just dressed in brown and grey, that's not true.
Taika also knew that making fun of Hitler was one of the best ways of defeating him, by stripping him of his power and authority. It's not making light of Hitler's monstrosities. It's making sure no one looks up to him and continues to follow in his footsteps. By creating a tone in which we are able to laugh at the ridiculousness of Nazis, we are taking them away from the power that they desperately sought after. So if you're upset because this film is making fun of Nazis, then that's fine, this film isn't for you, but that doesn't mean that this film is insensitive to the trauma and wickedness of Hitler and World War II.
Throughout the war itself, and sort of certainly a long time afterwards, Hitler was always satirized. I mean, the way of attacking someone like that is in part through humor, because I think one of the things which undermines dictators is humor, because the one thing that they have in their armory is fear, right? And you're not scared of someone that you're laughing or mocking. I think Hitler and any kind of, anyone like that is ripe for comedy and satire. It's the very thing which pulls the rug from beneath their feet.
When people criticize the tone of Jojo Rabbit, one of the biggest things I want to point out to them is that this movie is from the point of view of a child. It is about a child. You remember the last time you were a child? Was a long time ago, wasn't it? So you don't remember how magical things were when you were a kid? I was a kid, a little while ago. So thankfully, I still remember how powerful and beautiful imagination is, how colorful life was, and what the world looks like through a child's eyes. When you're a kid, the world is simple. Everything is just more colorful, vibrant, just like the world in Jojo Rabbit. It's full of beautiful, lush, bright colors. Yes, World War II was a dark time in history, but that doesn't mean it was literally dark. There would have been some sunshine. The tone, world, and characters of Jojo Rabbit reflect the central core of the story, which is again about a child, a 10-year-old boy. That is what the story is about. It is not about the Holocaust. It is about this 10-year-old boy. This is all coming from this child's perspective, who is definitely going to see things differently than an adult. Of course, his version of Hitler is silly, because he is a boy imagining what Hitler was like. It makes perfect sense why the world is colorful, the characters ridiculous, and the humor goofy, because it's all centered on this 10-year-old boy and his journey. I think it's absolutely charming and beautiful to see this kind of thing, because we don't often see things from a child's perspective. We don't get this child whimsy.
There is a lot of humor. There's often some quite Python-esque, almost surreal humor, and yet somewhere along the line, midway through the film, you are emotionally invested in this, what seems like a crazy world. And by the end, I defy anyone not to be moved and emotional and almost perhaps teary-eyed like I was. And that's an incredible needle to thread. It's almost impossible. And I did not think this was the man to do that.
And it just struck me that in every war, no one really taps into a child's experience and sees what the POV of a child is. Where we're grown-ups. I think I'm a grown-up. We are mentors. We are supposed to be the people who are guiding children through life, people to look up to, and people to give advice and help raise children in a positive way. But during wars, grown-ups act like lunatics, and it becomes an absurdist sort of comedy. How grown-ups act during wars. To see that point of view from a child, I thought was something really interesting, just to sort of highlight how crazy, how stupid war is. Yeah.
Jojo Rabbit is highly centered in its story. It is focused on telling the story of this 10-year-old boy and his journey from being a Nazi fanatic to having a Jewish girl as his new best friend, replacing Hitler. It is a beautiful story with an uplifting and encouraging message. This movie is a comedy with intention. It is a movie that uses comedy to tell its story. It uses comedy to point out the horrors of Nazi Germany. It uses comedy to take away the power of Hitler. And it uses comedy to bring about the points of view of its main character. It is not a comedy for the sake of laughs. It is a comedy for the sake of story. And that is why Jojo Rabbit was my favorite movie of 2019, and why it is, in my opinion, brilliant.